If this was actual prom night, you'd have sat around with blue balls from your date all night because nothing happens in this movie for the first hours. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be going way back to a cult classic. Or is it? We'll be reviewing the original Prom Night in 1980, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen. So starting off with a couple of the positives. Obviously, the most glaring positive to this movie is Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, obviously, she's pretty much a household name now. Anyone who likes slasher movies, the original Halloween, lately Knives Out. Obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis is just great and everything. You obviously see when you watch this movie kind of why she blew up at the time of the slasher boom, where, she got the Halloween role in this role, because she really is just a heads above everyone else when it comes to her energy or acting. The only thing that's kind of weird about this movie is that she's the main character, but she's like kind of not. Like, honestly, I wouldn't even say she has like the most film time of all the characters in the movie. If she does, it's not by much. And that's kind of like a letdown. They don't super play into it, but the line she has, she does really well. Also, when it comes to this movie in general, I wouldn't say it's a creepy movie, at least not to me personally, but it does have a couple of genuinely creepy moments, such as the opening scene where, I can see how people were scared as kids watching this. You have these kids in an abandoned warehouse building. They're kind of playing this game where they're going, kill, kill, and they're chasing the girl. And during this game, one of the kids falls out of a window and dies, and it's that generic trope where you have like kids, like kind of I Know What You Did Last Summer, where you have kids who, somebody died during a prank or during the game, and you have somebody who grows up to kind of resent them for it, and it becomes like a traditional slasher in that way. So something else I think that kind of like really works for this movie, but it's not even so much this movie, I think it's just kind of like the era of the slasher movies, is the aesthetic of the times and how well the 80s really played into, all the things that became pretty tropey. The wallpaper on the walls, the fact that there were no cell phones, everything was a ringing landline, grainy cameras due to technological limitations. The feeling of isolation due to the fact there was no cameras, no cell phones, there's no way to contact anybody when you were in danger. I just think that whole thing just works really well every time I revisit an 80s slasher. It's also kind of funny to me when I watch these movies how, like the generic phone call from the times has aged to be such a tropey, scary, mysterious thing. Because there was no caller ID, the anonymity to the phone calls, not having another person's face to connect to, how personal it was to get a phone number. It's just kind of funny to look back at some of these movies and think about how that was such a scary thing to everybody back in the day, but nowadays it's something you never think about. And something else is, when the more 80s movies I watch, I can't help but kind of give Black Christmas its respect, because the amount of things that movies kind of ripped from that movie, the tropes that were created, such as, somebody, the intruder being in the building, phone calls coming from an anonymous source with creepy dialogue. Like, this movie takes all of that when it comes to, the killer's calling all the girls one by one, kind of like breathing in the phone, saying creepy stuff. Obviously, homage to Black Christmas, but just something I picked up on. Now, another thing that really worked for me in this movie, and it's nothing that's like too crazy, but it was just the camera work, and it's something that's pretty synonymous with the 80s and the slasher genre as a whole. I think whenever you have long still shots that are just drawn out of like a person in a room with like something going on in the background, you expect somebody to walk by. I think it really helps to not break immersion because the movie's not overproduced. So when you get a shot that's just a still of somebody in a bedroom having a phone call or something for a long period of time, I think it really kind of helps you to immerse in the location, which helps you connect to the characters. Now, something else that kind of works in this movie for me is the character development, which will also go on to be a negative, but it does work for some reasons. I mean, when you have a movie that's barely over 90 minutes and the first 60 minutes or so is just character development, you do get the characters fleshed out to where you kind of do feel like all the characters are, a little bit different. They kind of add something to the movie. And, when their time comes, you do kind of feel like everybody's a little bit of a different personality that kind of blends into this friend group. So it was pretty believable in that regard. Now, when everyone watches a slasher movie, we know why they're coming. It's for the suspense, it's for the kills. And I will say, when you finally get there, it does land. I think the kills in this movie are pretty dang good. At least 2 to 3 of them. There's a kill in this movie. The sequence of it, like the chase, it's like legitimately 10 to 15 minutes, So, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty suspenseful when it's going on. Now, when you finally do get there, I did end up predicting the twist of this movie, which is kind of weird because I also simultaneously forgot the twist before the end of the movie. And that should go to tell you something, because I was kind of so uninvested at the movie by the time the twist got there. I kind of forgot there was even going to be a twist. I was like, oh yeah, I already remember this. Yeah, it's that guy. Figured it out. And now we get into the negatives. And starting off, the most glaring negative, no fault of his own, is Leslie Nielsen. So he's the first name in the credits that comes. It goes Leslie Nielsen, and the opening goes. I'm like, yes, Leslie Nielsen. I forgot he was in this movie. And the dude's in the movie maybe 60 seconds total. I mean, it's a total missed market to use him. I was pretty excited to see him, like, in a serious role, like maybe a detective cracking some one-liners. He's not even in the movie. Now, another negative to this movie, at least in my opinion, is the score and the music feels really outdated. And that's kind of a problem I think a lot of movies have with some of these like old 80s movies. This movie has this like weird Scooby-Doo thing going, like it's like one of those movies where like the suspense music is it's just outdated. There's like no other way to say it. And it would kind of interest me for a movie like this and some other of like the classic 80s movies, not to eliminate the originals, but to get like a remastered version with, you know, some more modern soundtrack and score that is deemed to be a little bit creepier, and see if that would help build some of the original tension that they had back in the day that's kind of aged poorly. And now some stuff about the characters. They're going for a little bit of a red herring thing in this movie where there's like a janitor who works at the school. They introduce him a couple times. They play him up really coy as like he's the creep. Like that guy could be him. And the problem I had with this character is he looked like a completely normal guy. There was nothing creepy about the guy. He just had like a fake hairpiece and a toupee on. So it was kind of my first laugh out loud moment of the movie. They're trying to sell me on the fact this guy's a creep, and he just has literally the fakest hairpiece you will ever see. The next thing, again, no fault to him either, is there's a character in this movie that the main actress, Jamie Lee Curtis, is dating named Nick. He just looked like a dollar store version of the bear, and I couldn't unsee it. So the whole movie, I'm just thinking, yes, chef. Which would have been ultra funny given how this movie kind of plays up towards the end. The last character gripe I have, and this is actually my biggest gripe, is that the killer's voice, they have this guy constantly talking, and he is so annoying. It's the most immersion breaking thing ever. And so every time he talked, I just wanted to be like, shut up, dude. Like, it's the worst role ever. And as stated earlier, obviously the biggest gripe to this movie is kind of the pacing of the movie where, you know, if this was actual prom night, you'd have sat around with blue balls from your date all night, because nothing happens in this movie for the first hours besides basic conversations that have really no interest to the plot. You know, it's just stuff talking about who's dating who, stuff like that. And it's like a Saturday Night Fever choreographed disco dancing show where just every scene is people dancing. And in a movie with this runtime, I did not expect that. I was really expecting a really generic tropey slasher movie, but it wasn't at all. There's like basically no suspense at all in this movie after the opening scene. I mean, when you get to the kills, as I said, it's pretty good. A couple of them are pretty creative, stuff I hadn't really seen in movies, and the way they were filmed in general was pretty good. But I just wasn't expecting there to be so much dancing. And that's the thing. In a movie like this, I know it for the time, just due to the nature of the film, the filming style, you know, it was probably pretty creepy. But in a movie like this, it's so important to just create suspense, maybe like a red herring or something in a way that keeps you engaged until the final act. And this, none of it really landed for me. You know, the janitor thing, and then the fact that they just don't do anything. There's no jump scares. There's no mention of anybody. The main protagonists in this movie aren't even aware this guy exists until the final 20 minutes. So in conclusion, there are some things there. You know, I see where the cultiness comes from, but like a lot of the movies that kind of become forgettable from that genre and era, it just has a lot of holes in it. They just don't age well. I do understand where the culty fandom comes from. When the kills get rolling, it's pretty good. You know, it stars Jamie Lee Curtis. That obviously ages really well over time. And they have no trouble saying this movie is still decisively better than that terrible remake from the early 2000s starring Idris Elba. You know, the killer just walks around in a white suit and hat and looks like a Neo backup dancer. So there's a plus in that. So in the end, this movie's pretty much like my prom experience. And in that, I didn't go to prom because I got ditched last minute by my date. She had a modeling gig and, you know, she bailed. So I never ended up going. But on the plus side, you know, after watching this movie, if it was like this, I don't know if I missed very much because I'm not a big disco dancer. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. If you did see this movie, obviously it's a cult classic. I want to know what your thoughts are. You think it holds up to the rep? You think it's a little bit overrated? It was just a product of its time? Or just tell me a funny prom story you got. Did you get ditched? Who knows, you know? If you like what you see, comment below. Let me know these things. You know, subscribe if you want to see some more videos. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.